The first notes of Ave Maria filled the auditorium, and the entire room seemed to stop breathing. This wasn't a child struggling through a simple melody. This was a musician. Her feet moved with impossible grace and control, drawing the bow across the strings with precision that professional violinists spend decades trying to achieve. Her body swayed with the music, not because she was off balance, but because she felt it. Every note was clear, every phrase was intentional, every moment was breathtaking. Teachers who had doubted her felt their throats tighten. The music teacher who had challenged her covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Parents who had never met this child found themselves weeping. And the students, the ones who had watched Manami struggle with tasks that seemed simple, sat in stunned silence, realizing they were witnessing something far beyond talent. They were witnessing the death of the word impossible. When the final note faded, there was a moment of absolute silence. And then the auditorium erupted. People leapt to their feet. The applause was deafening. Students cheered. Teachers wept openly. Manami's mother, sitting in the front row, sobbed so hard she could barely stand. And Manami, standing on that stage with her violin still balanced against her, simply bowed. She didn't smile triumphantly. She didn't gloat. She just bowed, the way any musician would, and walked off stage. But in that moment, she had done something far more important than deliver a beautiful performance. She had shattered every assumption, every limitation, every excuse that anyone in that room had ever made about what was possible. The story didn't end there. A video of that performance was uploaded to social media by a parent in the audience, and within weeks, it had millions of views. News outlets across Japan covered it. International media picked it up. Manami was invited to perform on television programs, at concert halls, at events around the world. But she never sought fame. She continued practicing, continued refining her technique, continued proving that the only real limits are the ones we accept. Today, Manami Ito is in her 20s. She has performed with orchestras, released recordings, and become an advocate for disability rights and adaptive music education. But more importantly, she has inspired millions of people to rethink what they believe is impossible. Here's what most people miss about this story. It's not just about one girl with extraordinary determination. It's about how often we, as a society, decide what other people are capable of before giving them a chance to show us. Those teachers didn't doubt Manami because they were cruel. They doubted her because they had been conditioned to see disability as limitation rather than difference. They couldn't imagine a path they had never seen before, so they assumed no path existed. But Manami didn't need them to imagine it for her. She imagined it herself. And that's the lesson here. The world will tell you what you can't do. It will give you 1,000 reasons why your dream is impractical, why your goal is unrealistic, why you should settle for something easier. And sometimes those voices will come from people who genuinely care about you. But the only voice that truly matters is yours. If you can see it, if you can feel it, if you're willing to work for it, then it's possible. Period. Think about the things you've told yourself you can't do. The career you didn't pursue because someone said it was too competitive. The skill you didn't learn because you thought you were too old. The dream you buried because it seemed too far out of reach. Now, think about a 10-year-old girl with no hands standing on a stage playing Ave Maria with her feet. If she can do that, what's your excuse? I'm not saying this to be harsh. I'm saying it because we all need that reminder sometimes. We all need to see someone do the impossible so we can remember that impossible is just a word people use when they lack imagination. That if this story moved you, if it made you rethink even one thing you believed about yourself or others, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me about a time you or someone you know proved the doubters wrong. And subscribe to this channel because I'm committed to bringing you stories that don't just entertain you, but change the way you see the world. Manami Ito proved that limitations are lies we tell ourselves. Now it's your turn to prove what you're capable of. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Imagine being told your entire childhood that you'll never be able to do something, that your dreams are impossible, that you should just accept your limitations and move on. Now imagine picking up the very thing they said you could never master and proving every single person wrong in under 60 seconds. That's exactly what happened when a young girl with no hands was challenged by her teachers to play the violin, and what followed left an entire auditorium in tears. This is the story of Manami Ito, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at the word impossible the same way again. Manami Ito was born in Japan without hands. From the moment she entered the world, doctors told her parents she would face a lifetime of challenges. Simple tasks that most of us take for granted, like writing, eating, getting dressed, would require adaptations, assistive devices, and endless patience. Her parents refused to treat her differently. They raised her with the belief that disability was just a word, not a destiny. But the world outside her home wasn't as kind. Teachers looked at her with pity. Classmates stared. Adults whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. And when she expressed interest in music, specifically the violin, the reactions ranged from uncomfortable silence to outright discouragement. One music teacher even told her mother directly that it would be cruel to let her try, that setting her up for failure would damage her self-esteem more than simply accepting reality. But Manami didn't accept reality. She rewrote it. Age 7. Manami watched a violin performance on television and became obsessed. She loved the way the sound seemed to float through the room, the way the musician's body moved with the music, the way something so delicate could create something so powerful. She told her mother she wanted to learn. Her mother, remembering the music teacher's words, hesitated. But when she looked into her daughter's eyes and saw that unmistakable determination, she couldn't say no. They searched for months to find a teacher willing to take her on. Most refused politely. Some laughed. One told them they were wasting everyone's time. Finally, they found an instructor named Takashi Kobayashi, a retired orchestral violinist who had spent 40 years teaching. He agreed to one trial lesson, not because he believed she could do it, but because he admired her courage to try. That first lesson was a disaster. Manami couldn't hold the violin the traditional way. She couldn't grip the bow. Every method Kobayashi had taught for 4 decades was useless. He went home that night convinced he had made a mistake, that he had given this little girl false hope. But something kept him up that night. He couldn't stop thinking about the look on her face when she heard the first note, even though it was scratchy and uncontrolled. She hadn't looked disappointed. She had looked hungry. The next day, he called her mother and said he wanted to continue, but they would have to invent a completely new technique. Over the next 3 years, Kobayashi and Manami developed a method that had never been documented in any music school. She learned to hold the violin using her upper arms and chin, balancing it in a way that would make most violinists' necks ache just thinking about it. She controlled the bow with her feet, developing a level of dexterity and precision that seemed anatomically impossible. Every day after school, she practiced for hours. Her feet blistered. Her neck cramped. She fell countless times. But she never quit. When Manami was 10 years old, her school held a talent show. The music teacher who had once discouraged her mother stood in the back of the auditorium as students signed up to perform. When Manami's name appeared on the list, next to the words violin performance, the teacher assumed it was a mistake. She approached Manami during rehearsal and, in front of other students, suggested she reconsider. She said it gently, with what she probably thought was compassion, but the message was clear. You're going to embarrass yourself. Other teachers nearby nodded in agreement. One even offered to let Manami help with stage setup instead, as if that was a kindness. But Manami just smiled and said she'd like to perform anyway. The teachers exchanged glances. One of them, trying to be supportive but clearly skeptical, said, "Then show us what you can do." It was a challenge disguised as encouragement. They expected her to attempt a simple children's song, maybe make it through a few bars, and then everyone could applaud politely and move on. They had no idea what was coming. The night of the talent show, the auditorium was packed. Parents, students, and teachers filled every seat. Manami was scheduled near the end of the program. As the performances went on, the music teacher kept glancing at the program, dreading what she assumed would be an uncomfortable moment. When Manami's name was finally called, a hush fell over the crowd. She walked onto the stage, her violin already positioned, the bow resting near her feet. The stage lights made her small frame look even smaller. Some people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. A few parents exchanged worried looks. And then she began to play.